Hello, and welcome back to the PNN. My name is Parker Taft. Today we are talking about how to stay productive, a topic inspired again by the MindDash app, which is a self-development app which gives you little notes and tidbits of information a day to help you optimize your routine, better yourself, good habits, stuff like that, which I highly recommend that all of my viewers subscribe to and download on their phones. The daily information summaries I find quite informative. So today we're talking about productivity. I'm sure many of you have seen the fall off in your own productivity, either from working at home and the myriad of distractions that surround you, or by the rampant anxiety and lack of knowledge that seems to pervade us at the moment. No one knows what's happening. No one knows what they should be doing. When you're doing something, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing, and you often overcomplicate things or duplicate each other's work or do the opposite of what the other's doing. So it can be very hard to focus and stay productive working towards your personal goals, whether that's in health, business, finance, or relationships. And it can also affect how you do at work or school. So I think it's important that we all look deep and see how we can optimize our routines in order to stay productive as we continue to weather the crisis around us. So, let us begin. So, what does it mean to be productive? I think it's important first that we define the term since productivity means so much to so many different people. So, I got this piece of information not from Merriam-Webster Dictionary, where I typically get my definitions, but for that is more of an economic term of output, measure of output. The more productive a business is, the less resources they have to put into it to get the most out of it. So it's a farmer making pumpkins. The most productive farmer will take 10 pumpkin seeds and sell 10 pumpkins, whereas a very inefficient farmer will take 10 pumpkin seeds and grow one pumpkin. So So the definition I used in this particular instance was from Tony Robbins. If many of you don't know, he's a motivational speaker and personal development coach. I've attended several of his free webinars, and while I disagree with some of his takes and viewpoints, I'm no expert. He's been in the field for over 30 years, so I can't render any professional judgment. But I do like some of his ideas, mainly on the focus of what it means to be productive. So, the definition of productivity in the realm of personal development is achieving the results you want, i.e., goals, with less time and effort. Basically, optimizing your entire routine in life towards goal setting and achieving. You want to learn to play the piano? Well, you find the most efficient way to learn how to play the piano. You want to start a business? You find the most in demand sector, or that you feel a passion towards, and you find the most efficient way to set up a business with the least amount of capital. Mind you, this doesn't mean that you can't follow what you love or follow a slower, more incidental path or take a meandering exploratory venture, nor is it telling you that you need to rush to do anything. No, no, no. That isn't what productivity means. It is the most efficient method for you. Everything in the realm of personal development is focused on you and your beliefs, your feelings, your ideas, your goals, your dreams. So, one thing productivity isn't, and if it's the only one thing that you take away from this video, is productivity is not being busy. We see many productive people who are busy, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily entirely productive. Actually, a truly productive person won't be constantly busy, but instead will be ahead of schedule since they found the best way to optimize their time to get the most done. So, you have a CEO who's constantly rushing from meeting to meeting, doesn't know half what's going on, and relies on, you know, a large staff in order to make sure his office gets everything done that needs to be done. Well, that's all right, and I'm sure most CEOs operate on that fashion, but it isn't the most productive fashion because you're wasting a lot of resources on manpower, hours worked, pay, and systemic inefficiencies in the paperwork. So, a truly productive CEO would only have a few tasks and meetings he had to do each day in order to accomplish what he needed to get done to run the company and expand it along his plan that he proposed to the board of directors. And many people say, well, that would sound utterly average. He's not, putting in the effort, putting in the hard work. Well, certainly he is, but he's just optimized it and made it as most efficient as possible. Stuff that doesn't need to he doesn't need to be informed with. He doesn't need to be informed with, but the stuff he needs to get in order to run the business and to grow it, he gets. So that's what productivity means. So how do we stay productive in these distracting times? Especially for many of us who are working and learning from home, both these past couple of months and probably within the immediate future, since Amazon, Google, and Facebook, I believe, have announced plans to continue at home working until 2021, and both public and private education, from kindergarten to PhD students, are debating whether or not to do online courses and virtual learning or a hybrid of real life in classroom and virtual learning. It's completely unknown and up in the air for most places at this time. So I think a few of these productivity tips would be extremely helpful for you. I know I found them helpful when I read the article. Mind you, this isn't an exhaustive list and doesn't contain all of the minute explanations and definitions and the deep dive of how these are helpful and beneficial. This is just a quick summary and reference point for you. If you want to dig deeper because you're interested in it, then I've referenced my sources and further reading page, which is at the end of the slideshow and will be in the description below, as always. So, to begin with, take regularly scheduled breaks often. I know I mentioned this in my previous 2 episodes for the past couple of days, but it is important. It helps prevent burnout or those long diversionary periods where you're working really hard for, like, say 2 hours, and all of a sudden you look at your phone and what you think is like, oh, I'm taking a 5-minute break, turns into a half an hour, and then an hour, and then an hour and a half, and then the stuff you should have been working on sort of falls to the wayside, and then you realize you're behind, even though if you started out the day ahead. So, according to the University of Illinois, brief diversions, 5-10 minutes, actually helps to improve focus and diminish burnout, while also preventing the I'm staring at my phone, social media thing, where you get distracted for an hour, hour and a half after having been focused on 1 or 2 tasks for a prolonged period of time. So, short interval breaks. The Pomodoro method is actually highly recommended, commonly used by software developers. Basically, it runs 25 minutes of deep work on one task and one task only. As we know, multitasking is the death of time management or productivity. And then you take a 5-minute break. And then after 4 sets of these, which would be about 100 minutes, so an hour and 20 minutes, not including the 5-minute interval breaks of work, you would take a more prolonged period of time off, so maybe 15 to 30 minutes, and then you would go back to work. And it's been found to be quite helpful for those who engage in a lot of deep work, attorneys, software developers, engineers, those who have to focus on one thing for a prolonged period of time. And this one's more for people who work at home, virtually, is set and enforce personal boundaries. There's been a rise in people who are actually working outside of work hours. I'm sure those of you at least went to my high school will know the late night emails of a teacher posting an assignment that's due the next day. And I'm sure many people who have been out in the working world have experienced similar things with their bosses getting texts, emails, or the all favorite now, which is Slack, a sort of employee group chat Discord type application, telling you, what you need to do, or something that needs to be done right away, or said to be done right away, which doesn't necessarily need to be done right away because it's outside of what would have been typically normal business operating hours. So instead, you find yourself doing work a lot earlier in the day than you typically would have, and a lot later, which people can find both distracting. It can drain them because it doesn't give them that work home separation, that time to relax, unwind, and do what they want in sort of a self manner, and it hurts productivity in the long run because of that fact. A person who starts working, like, say, a typical person works 9 to 5. Now, when that they're working at home, they start working at 7. They maybe do some small tasks, emails, and stuff like that while they're going about their morning routine, and they continue work right up until they go to bed that night, answering emails, notifications, doing minor tasks that they think, oh, I can get it done in a few minutes, but it actually takes time away from them, makes them less productive overall because they're not focusing on it. And especially later at night or very early in the morning, their mental state is not completely there yet. It's not, their brain's not firing off all cylinders. So they're not as efficient in getting the task done, and it's typically not a better quality task. As many people will probably testify, especially high school and college students, pulling an all nighter for an essay or a project doesn't usually lead to the highest quality essay or project. Just something to think about. So, setting and enforcing personal boundaries. So you set a time where you're on the clock. You're always starting work at 8:30, let's say, and you're off the clock by 5. That is the end of your workday. You don't check your work email. You don't check your, you know, work text messages or anything like that. That is the end of your workday. You're done. You can go do whatever you want, whether it's working out. You can't go out in the town right now, but playing video games, relaxing, Skyping with friends. Does anyone still use Skype? Don't know. And on to the next one. Track and try to limit your media intake. The news, and I think many people are just learning this, the news has a negativity bias because they found out that people focus more on negative aspects. Viewership jumps when there's something negative going on. So they tend to play that up, and always create the next emergency or crisis in order to get those views because most media outlets and news stations rely on advertising in order to be free or cheap subscriptions. They rely on advertising for the majority of their revenue. So they need more viewers. To get more viewers, they need to have what people want. And while you may not want all the negative news, your mind is pre programmed evolutionary wise to be looking out for bad news that might affect you in order to prepare for incoming threats. So, excessive media intake, social media, news, stuff like that, has been shown to be not only distracting, as we all know, social people can spend hours on social media without being overly productive, and social media itself can bring about feelings of depression and inferiority. But it's also been proven to induce anxiety in people because of the uncertainness, especially in the current times where one news outlet will be saying one thing, one news outlet will be saying the complete opposite, and another news outlet will say we're being invaded by the Martians, and you don't know what to believe, which inevitably hurts work performance because you're distracted and not focused on your work. And even when you put away your phone or turn off the TV or radio, your brain's still thinking about what the news said or what you saw on social media while you're doing the work. So the distraction carries on even past the initial consumption phase. So my recommendation would be to set aside specific times when you check the news, your emails, and your social media. The rest of the time, during your working hours, that is, your phone is either off or put away, and you're focused solely on the tasks of work that are at hand. Exercise daily. This is my recommendation for almost everything, but it is important. It can help rejuvenate the body and the soul. It helps you release stress, as well as improve blood circulation, uh, burn off calories, get the metabolism jump started. So there's many healthy benefits to exercising daily, which all helps to improve focus, which in turn improves productivity. And then make to-do lists. I know I mentioned this last episode, but if you take the top 6 items you need to do to get done that day, top 6, the most important things that you need to get done, and then write them down the night before, and then when you wake up the next morning, You look at that 6-item to-do list, and after you've done your morning routine, those are the first 6 items that you do before you check your emails, before you log on to social media. Those are the 6 items that you get accomplished before anything else. And it's been shown to increase productivity substantially because you get your most important stuff done out of the way and then leave the low yield tasks for later in the day when they don't have such a high priority. Getting them done later in the day, it doesn't matter if you have to, push it back to tomorrow because the low yield tasks don't yield as much benefit for yourself as say as the higher yield tasks, but you should do in the morning. Do one thing at a time. Again, I must emphasize, and if it's one of the few things you take away from this video, is that multitasking is a productivity killer. It splits your focus, which divides your attention, and your brain doesn't work as fast or efficiently when you're split focused and switching between multiple different things. All right, I'm working on this form. Now I'm working on that form. Now I'm listening to music. Now I'm watching a YouTube video. Now I'm back to that form. Your brain is all of a sudden split, and you were working on, say, form X, and now you switch to form Z because you found a piece of information that needs to go in form Z, and you're still then something pops up in your mind about form X, and you switch back to that, and then you forget what you were supposed to do for form Z, and it just becomes a cascade of inefficiencies and can lead to errors because typically you're switching your attention, so your brain doesn't catch as easily simple mistakes that could be made. The transposition of a letter, the misspelling of a word, the movement of a number, a 1 or a 0, added or subtracted, and all of a sudden there's, what your budget was supposed to be $10,000 and now you're only getting a $1,000 budget. So you can see how multitasking can be both inefficient and detrimental to people. So I don't advise it. If you're going to do something, do it well. And if you say you're going to do something, do it one at a time. That way, you don't have to worry about messing it up or screwing it up. All your attention and focus is on that one task at that time. And then lastly, schedule your time. And we can reference back to my first video on my 30-day challenge series where I talked about time management, but block your time out into hour or 2-hour segments of when you're supposed to get certain tasks done. And then try to stick to that schedule as best you can. That's all I have for you today. As always, this is not an exhaustive list, and if you want to dive deeper, get some more tips or information, then I advise you follow through and look into my sources and further reading for a deeper dive on these particular topics. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I enjoyed making it and found it informative, and some helpful tips and advice that I am hoping to adapt into my own scheduling, time management, and productivity systems. As always, this is the PNN Broadcast, signing off.